Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance.
Hello there. I'm back with Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Hi.
Happy summer.
So Sarah and I are recording this. Yeah, we're recording this in mid-July. We are, I'm at my cottage. I forgot my microphone, so I'm really hoping that the quality of the sound is good enough. I think it will be just fine because I'm here by myself, so it's nice and quiet. And we decided to talk about this topic today because we have read a couple of articles. Sarah forwards me things every once in a while. And we'd read a couple of articles about the topic of ambition and, you know, the changes that are happening socially around how people are measuring success and how much ambition, I guess, people have. Anyway, Sarah forwarded me a couple articles and we talked about it a little bit, and we thought this would be a great topic because it, you know, as often is the case, I think for us, when we read things, we see them in print, and it's really exciting to see them in print because we think, oh, this is great. People are starting to talk about this. People are starting to think about this. But then I think both of us, I mean, I'll speak for myself. Usually I read it and I'm like, yeah, duh.
Duh.
You know, like I already know this. And that's not because I'm some great, I'm not some great like foreteller of the future or, you know, way ahead of everybody else. But I do think that a lot of these truths that we talk about on this podcast are things that do become clearer for women as they move through midlife. And so this topic, I think, ties in really nicely with our general conversation that we have around the clarity and wisdom, I guess, that comes in midlife for women.
Yeah. So
do you want to introduce the topic, Sarah? Do you want to talk about the first article you sent me from The Guardian? It was called The End of Ambition.
Yeah, it was, I think the articles that catch my eye are the ones that I look at and I think, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that resonates with me and has resonated with me for a while for myself and my practice. And so those are the ones that I end up sending you, which is like, oh, we can talk about this because we know we've lived this, you know, we're living this right now, or my patients and your clients have lived this. So the thing I found most interesting about it, well, I guess was just the idea that this is they're reporting on it being kind of a global trend. I don't know about global. It was the Guardian. And so they're kind of, you know, it's a pretty good pulse on what's going on around sort of what was the age group, like 40 and up? Was that the people that were interviewed for the article? About around 40, talking about how the events of the last few years had really brought into focus their relationship with ambition and their relationship with whether or not their ambition was bringing them happiness, and whether or not ambition was all it's cracked up to be, really. And the people who were interviewed had really just said, as you said this morning, ambition had kind of left the building, and that they were focusing. The people in the article were focusing more on enjoying where they were right now, rather than pushing forward, thinking always about the future, what's next, the things we're taught to value when we're starting out our careers. So I found it really interesting because I think I see a lot of that in my office, and I see a lot of women in my life and in my office who are in places in their careers where they feel the pressure to keep moving forward, but their heart is saying, I just really, just really want to be home baking bread. What was one CEO said to me once a number of years ago, and I've never forgotten it, because I was a young practitioner, ambitious, just starting out. And I remember looking at this woman who is, 55, maybe 50, who'd spent her whole life moving up the ladder, ambitious, successful, powerful. And she said, I really just want to be home baking bread. Like that's where my heart is. And I remember thinking, what? I don't understand. And that actually probably was one of the first things that started me thinking about this perimenopausal journey and how women's values change.
Yeah. I just pulled up the article because I couldn't remember the age demographic, but the person who's writing it is actually talking about her 30th birthday and how this happened when she was quite young. So she says, by my 30th birthday in March of 2021, the version of myself who had organized her entire life around her career felt like a stranger. I was still productive, but no longer at the expense of my health, happiness, or relationships. It was as if the fire that had been fueling me for half my life was down to a smolder. And for the first time, I was content to let it go out. It turns out I was not alone. This has been called the age of anti-ambition. Over the past 2.5 years, many people have taken stock of how they spend their time, where they find meaning, their hopes for the future, and found work wanting. And then they talk about, the great resignation and the number of people who have left their jobs and chosen early retirement as a result of the pandemic, and, continue on. But it's interesting because the author's actually quite having this epiphany quite young. I think that's probably what's caused the conversation around it. I think it's always been there for women in their late 40s, early 50s. I think it's part, as you and I've talked about in so many other episodes, it's part of that transition. But now it seems to have been accelerated as a result of global events and what's going on, and younger demographics are experiencing that, and now it's getting some traction in terms of a topic of conversation. I thought it was really interesting how that article talked about the shift from hustle culture, which that was just, I must have seen the word hustle in my feed, hustle in my feed on Instagram and Facebook. It was my social media feed 1,000 times a day for like 7 years. That word was everywhere. Hustle, hustle, hustle. Oh, you got to hustle culture, and hustle to, hustle all of it. Hustle mothering, hustle in your business. Right. And they're talking this article about how there's really been a shift away from that hustle culture thing. And even those social celebriries who were pumping hustle culture aren't pumping that.
Yes.
It's really interesting. They were talking about like Kim Kardashian and Beyonce. And so many little pieces in this article, and then the other article that you forwarded me, which is called Why You're Losing Ambition as You Age. Mm-hmm. Those two articles together kind of formed the basis for the conversation that we wanted to have today. So the first one, as we've just said, is really about the shift that's happened globally, that's being noticed globally. It's sort of a decrease in ambition. And we want to talk about how, for us, we see it less as a decrease in ambition, more of a shifting of priorities and a moving of ambition into a different area of your life, becoming ambitious about different things that matter more. And then the other article, Why You're Losing Ambition as You Age, really focuses in on demographics and this, it's called the U-bend of life, which is this phenomenon of happiness that shows that people are most happy when they're like 18. And then their happiness satisfaction level kind of decreases and kind of comes down into the bottom of the U when they're around 46, happens to be the max unhappiness age. And then it starts to come back up. And by the time they're 82, they're as happy as they were when they were 18 or something, right? So that article focuses a little bit more in on that, and how there's also a mean or average age of, I always get those terms wrong. So statistics was not my.
Mean is in the middle and average is add them all up. And
well, I don't even know which one it is, so I'm going to get it wrong. But they talk about how age 35 is kind of that age where most people start to feel their ambition dipping. And they're not as interested in getting promoted and moving up the ladder. So
I think, sorry, does that have to do with responsibilities?
Well, I think it must. And I also think that 46 age, that's the lowest dip in the youth then makes total sense, right? I mean, I can only really speak for women, but I guess it's the same for men. But for women, you know, when you're 46, you're just coming, a lot of us are just starting to come out of those like really tough child rearing years if we're parents. But also at 46, that's a time where parents can start to become ill, aging parent, you know, you can find yourself in the sandwich at that point in time. And I think for a lot of women who've been focused on their career, that's a time where it just starts to feel a lot less exciting because you've been doing it for a long time and you're burnt out and exhausted from it. So I can totally see how 46 is the age. I was saying to you before we started that coincidentally, when I read that, I was like, wow, that's crazy. 46 is when I quit drinking. 46 is when I was the most miserable. When I got to a place where I thought, I can't keep doing this. Like, this is just not good enough. Something is missing. Something has to change. And then, you know, I made that change, which I've talked about many times. It wasn't easy, but I did it. And I, you know, in the process of that, it was like I was clawing myself up the other side of the U.
Yeah.
So weird to me that was the exact age for me that I had that epiphany, like, this can't stay the same. I can't accept this status quo for any longer.
I can't even remember 46, to be honest, because my kids were like 6 and 8.
Yeah.
And I just remember being like, just angry all the time. I just felt angry all the time because I was perimenopausal. I probably wasn't sleeping. I don't remember. And it was just too much. It was too much. Everything was too much.
Yeah.
So,
I met you then. I thought you were angry too. I was afraid of you.
but lots of people have thought I've been angry. It's my social anxiety.
I know, we've talked about it. I know. I'm just bugging you. I didn't actually think that. I did not feel a natural affinity and warmth from you, like I feel from you now. But I feel like I was probably giving out the same vibe. Like, I was in exactly the same place. I was angry all the time. That was the peak of menopause rage for me. You know, I went into menopause 3 years later. Yeah. I didn't really know what was going on, but I was definitely not happy and not feeling great about anything at that point. So let's maybe start, Sarah, with it. Like, let's start by talking about what's been going on globally and how this might be contributing to this awareness around a shifting ambition, I guess, for people. I mean,
well, I think people were talking about it, like that article, that Forbes article is 2014. So it was starting to be looked at beforehand, but I think that the pandemic really is what is probably the place where it shifted. Although I would say that for the younger generation, probably they were starting to look at our generation and go, I'm not having any of that.
Oh, for sure. That's been happening. I mean,
we've been doing that with the generations ahead of us too, but for sure the younger generation, my younger patients in their 20s and 30s, I can't believe their boundaries around work. Blows my mind how clear they are around what they will put up with and what they won't. And they've been criticized for that, as you know, the millennium generation, or don't even know what generation they are, but you know, the millennials who won't work as hard as we did, right? That was there's been kind of a generalization. I'm not saying that that's the truth, but I think that that's a generalization. But I wonder if in some cases that they're willing to work hard, but they just have better boundaries about how they're going to approach their lives and work-life balance.
Yeah, it definitely has been a trend. I mean, I saw that happening, and it was happening in 2006, 7, 8, like in those years before I left law, when I was a partner and, you know, involved in recruiting and retention. We saw it with younger associates. I mean, it was a big deal at the time. Like, what is happening, and how do we find people who are willing to work as hard as we work, because we need that, you know. And I know I do work now where I consult and talk to law firms a lot about what's happening and wellness and balance and the needs and desires of their lawyers, and how they can keep especially their women lawyers happy. And and this is a big piece of the conversation. And the truth is it's shifting, it's shifted. There's no way to unshift it. It's not bad.
Not going back.
It's not bad. It's not bad or good. I don't think. I think it's just, it is what it is. I actually think overall it's going to benefit humans to work less, obviously, as a burnout coach. But I think we just have to accept that this is a shift that has happened, and it didn't just happen overnight like people think. It's been happening slowly. I almost feel like women paved the way. I think working moms paved the way because we couldn't do it all. So we had to demand something different. We had to figure out a different way to do it. And so maybe in a way we paved the way for all of this, younger generation.
But I think COVID was a tipping point, certainly for a lot of people. Put you in your home, put you working in your pajamas pretty much. Yeah. I mean, that's, I'm no sociologist, but I imagine that the freedom of being able to not dress in pumps and pumps and nylons. Do people still wear nylons? I haven't worn nylons in years. That freedom, that you can't, it's very hard to go back from that. Very hard to go back to playing the game.
So they use these words in the article that I loved. I wrote them down. This is how much I loved them. Pointless presenteeism.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, why should I be here?
In my nylons and pumps.
Yeah,
like what's the point of this? And I'm just here because you want me to be here, but it actually, what we've learned in the last few years is that it doesn't really impact the quality of the service. In fact, for a lot of people, they're able to provide better quality work product and service as a result of not having the added stress of having to go into a job and the commuting time and all the rest of it that's involved in it. So I agree. And I think another piece globally that's contributing to this is climate change. And it's not mentioned at all really in the article, but I can't believe it's not impacting the psyche of people around permanence and the future.
Yeah.
And ambition is all about the future. It's all about like, if I just keep going this way, then I can get this, and then I can get this, and then I can get this. And for me personally, climate change is, first of all, terrifying. But second of all, it makes it really difficult for me to go too far into the future in my brain. It just stops me. It stops me short. For me, it stops me short for my kids. And I expect that is because I'm not special. That's happening across the board for people. And that has to be having an impact on this whole like, oh, let me just like work like a dog. So when I'm 70, I can get this,
that thing that might not be there.
Exactly.
I think COVID also taught us that. It's just like the world can actually change on a dime. Like within a few months, everything can change, and you are going to be like, things are going to come out of your mouth that you have never thought of before in terms of, mask wearing and sanitizing. Like I was remembering washing the groceries, like that all of a sudden that things can really, that was the first sort of, I think we've all experienced that in our lives to some degree, some people more than others with, big traumas and various, bad things that have happened. But globally, everybody experienced this like, holy shit, the whole thing can shut down. Yeah. And that I think has got to, even if you can't, it's even still hard for me to intellectually process that but it has to have an energetic impact on everybody's psyche. Other than the fact that just the whole world is now living at a higher level of cortisol and, hypervigilance, right? So we're all now kind of a little bit just more stressed all the time because of this. But but I think that it has to have an impact in terms of your ability to think about the future, and especially with the multiple lockdowns, right? So the first time we went through the first one, and then we thought, oh, blissfully, like a year later, whatever it was, I can't remember. Oh, this is going to be okay. The kids are going to go back to camp, and they're not going to have masks, and it's going to be all right. And we all relaxed a bit. I think it was that first summer, maybe, that we all relaxed a little bit, and then boom, it was back. It was just like, oh, okay, we are living like this now. And I think then climate change becomes that's what climate change is going to start becoming, which is like my parents had to go home from their cottage this weekend because it's going to feel like 40 on the South Shore. And my dad has a heart thing, and you know, for him to be in 40-degree heat with no air conditioning, because it is a like cottagey cottage, they had to go home. And so it's kind of that like, whoa, now we have to look at temperature and build just even our plans for this week based on temperature.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you can look at it as something like with sort of freedom and ability to plan and have ambition for the future has been taken away, or you can flip it and see it as a gift. And the gift that I see it as is that people are finally they've finally been forced without even knowing it was happening to them to start to live for the moment.
Yeah, totally.
Right? It's like this big shift has led to people doing the thing that I have been trying to do myself now for the last 10 years, and I'm better at it than I was, but I'm certainly no expert. It's definitely something I coach on constantly. How can you slow down? How can you actually make sure that you're in the moment that you're in? How can you find joy in the small things? How can you care less about things that are outside of your control? How can you focus
those
like
things?
All of this stuff is happening naturally as a result of like, oh, holy shit, actually, I was never in control in the first place. And I have no control, really. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like we don't have any power here, because I do think we have lots of power. I think there's a difference between control and power. And I think we have great power, and we need to make sure we don't forget that in terms of influencing things, especially around climate change. I'm very passionate, but that's why we don't want to make it sound like I don't believe in that, because I 100% do. But I do think this idea that we had before, like, oh, I'm totally in control of this, and I can just work really hard and, move my way up the ladder. And then when I'm 55, this will happen. And then when I'm 60, this will happen. And when I'm 70, this will be the situation. And I mean, that was never true anyway. That was an illusion of control. But I think this combination of circumstances globally has just like ripped that Band-Aid right off. And people are really clear on that. So I want to focus in on the gift in it, because we're not a doomsday podcast. Like, this is about like, okay, great. So how is this actually going to serve us as humans, and especially as women in midlife? Like, what's the learning in this, and what are the gifts in this that are actually going to be potentially really amazing for us?
Well, I love the idea. Like, I really resonate with the idea that in order to have like clear ambition, there has to be a sense of feeling like you're in control of it. Right. And so to be letting ambition go means also to be letting that control go, as you said. And I think that working for women to work on that sense of the freedom in not having that control is a really key part that can help you move through perimenopause, because perimenopause feels really out of control. Most of the women in my practice, myself, you, like, we all sort of felt this out of control hijack of our bodies, right? And so that's not just physical, that's also, it's also emotional, it's also what's happening in your world. It's also like slowing down enough to actually look at the things that you think you have control over that you don't. These are all really important things to be evaluating at this time of life. And I say perimenopause because it's very acute during that time, but also many women get over the hump to menopause and still are feeling that. And so it's just an important transitional time of life, and looking at lack of control as being like, as when I grew up, the idea of being out of control is the worst possible thing you could be. Right? It's like, you have to have your shit together all the time as a woman if you're going to be successful in anything, and you're going to hold it together, and you're going to manage all the things you were taught that you were supposed to, allowed to, want, should want, all of those things. Control is like at the center of it. And so letting go of control is very scary. And so how can we take the lessons from the last couple of years around letting go of control and celebrating the freedom in that, and like extend it into the very small moments of our daily lives.
Well, I think we focus in on what we can control, because the truth is we have control over an awful lot.
Yeah.
We have control over how we feel. And I know people don't believe that, but as a coach, I can tell you, you can change the way you feel. You can change the things you think. You can change the things you believe. You can change the stories that aren't serving you. You can change all of those things. We have a great deal of control over that. And we have control over how we behave and the way we respond to situations and the choices that we make around how we go through our life. So, you know, I like the idea of taking this idea of ambition / lack of control and kind of flipping it and saying, well, no, it's just a different direction for my ambition. I'm focusing it instead on what I can control and how I want to live today, as opposed to how I want to live in 20 years. And in terms of this, you know, this idea of control, I'm choosing to focus in on the things I do have control over and really experiment around what happens and comes to me as a result of spending my energy on that instead of on the stuff that is and was always outside of my control. Like what actually is available to me if I just focus in on my own needs, wants, desires, reactions, responses, emotions, you know, and pay attention to that stuff.
So it's like your internal state rather than your external, right?
Yeah.
Like when I talk about letting go of control, it's like letting go of the external things you're trying to control.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and then that the switch to being more present to the internal things that you can control and how you are in the world and how you, the decisions that you make and how you feel about things is also mirrors that perimenopausal shift from external energy to internal.
Right. And this is where the empowerment comes in that I was talking about before, because you can make choices to say things, do things, respond in ways, direct your energy at things that actually will influence those external outcomes, but you can't control them. And so, you know, I'd want to be clear, this isn't a disempowered state. I actually think it's the most empowered state for humans to live in. And it's the state that I'm constantly working on doing more, being in more. And, you know, I'm human like everybody else. So I find myself in those places where I start panicking about things and feeling like, you know, I can influence and change outcomes that I can't change, or that somehow I can make people happy or, you know, solve problems for people, which I can't do either. I can't do any of that. You know, I mean, that's the very basis of coaching. Like, I'm not here to solve your problems. You know, it's not what a coach does. And I'm also trying to take that and translate that over into my personal life. When someone's struggling, it's not my job to try to fix them. And I cannot fix them, even if I want to try. But what I can do is I can depersonalize things. I can change the way I respond. I can give people space. I can give myself space. I can allow myself to feel emotions. I can not judge myself for those. Like, there are so many things that I have control over in that situation. And if something's not serving me, I can do something different. And if a relationship isn't serving me, I can choose to leave it. And if a substance isn't serving me, I can choose to stop taking it.
Your career, if your career is not serving you, you've done that twice.
I sure have. Yeah. So I've changed my career twice. Hopefully I'm kind of, you know what? I'm actually kind of in the process of doing a bit more of a change with it. I've been doing a ton of coaching coaches lately, which has just been really fulfilling for me. I absolutely love doing it. So I don't know whether I'll ever stop coaching privately. Probably not, but this has been really fun. So yeah, you get to change it. Like, if you find something that feels good to you and you're excited about it, then you can lean into that, you know, and that's the ambition that I'm focusing on. It's like, okay, well, what are the choices that I can make around my job or my personal life that are actually going to make me feel really great today, like soon, instead of 20 years from now.
And like the ambition for me feels more like about feeling. It's like I have an ambition to feel good about the choices that I'm making and to feel enlivened by my work and to feel like to do the things necessary to move in that direction, as opposed to some sort of market out, like an outcome measure, like a measurement in terms of like making this amount of money or serving this many clients or et cetera, et cetera. It feels more now about feeling. How do I want to feel in the world? How do I want to be?
Yeah, totally. I talk about that all the time in coaching, the difference between doing and being, and how, we are very, we're not great at being as midlife women. We've spent like 20 years doing, and when you do all the time, there's no space to be, and so we forget how to do that, and it feels really uncomfortable. That's why stopping doing things and cutting back and saying no feels so uncomfortable to women. It's because it's like, well, what the hell am I going to do if I'm not doing? I don't know how to be. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm uncomfortable with. The very idea of that makes me restless, and and I get that because I was there for a long time. So yeah, I absolutely think this is a feeling. There's a feeling piece to all of this, and then the other piece of it that I think is worth reflecting on, if you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, okay, yeah, I get this. Like, I'm noticing that that's shifted for me in the last few years, either as a result of the pandemic or just because I'm a woman in midlife, and it's been something I've been thinking about. Like, we were taught as young girls that there were certain milestones that we should be trying to achieve. Right. And I mean, I list them for me, and this is not going to be the same for everybody, but for me, they were get an education, and like get whatever education, the best education you can get, basically. Like that was, like, don't go to art school. No offense to anyone who went to art school. I have a great respect for you. I kind of wish I had in many ways. But I was sort of like steered away from all of that. Not in a malignant way, just in a supportive, well-meaning way. But do the education, and then when you do the education, get the best job you can, and go out there and get that job that the men think you can't get. Go get that one, and then do the best you can do with that. But also make sure you get married, and then also make sure you have kids, right? And also make sure you do that young enough that you're not an older mother. Like, I remember having all of these ideas in my head. I had this, my friends laugh at me. I used to say I was going to be married and have 2 kids by the time I was 30, which did not happen. But, I had these ideas in my head, and they were all milestone based. And then when I went into law, it was like, well, of course you're going to want to become a partner, and you're going to want to do that on the shortest partnership track possible. So you want to get there by 7 years, all of these milestones that I had. And you want to buy your first house, and you want it, whatever. They were all these big, these moments in time for me. And they really set like a chronology for me for the rest of my life. And then, what I realized along the way is that by just reaching for these brass rings constantly, all I was doing is that, like, once I got one, it was like, okay, what's next? And then I was just plowing through. And to me, that's ambition, right? That's what I would have I would have said my ambition looked like. It just looked like going from brass ring to brass ring. And then what happens is you miss all the time in between. You miss all of the stuff that's happening in between because you're so focused on the next thing. And the idea is that the milestone is what's going to make you happy, right? The brass ring is actually what's going to bring you that happiness and life satisfaction. And it just became so obvious to me in the last 10 years that was some bullshit. And that I unfortunately had frittered away like a couple of decades where I could have been present and enjoying the days I was in instead of reaching for the next milestone. I have so much regret around it's mostly my 40s. So it's like 35 to 45. I have great regret around that decade because those were the years that I rushed through. They also happened to be the years when my kids were young, but I rushed through just trying to like do all the things and like get to the next, like, oh, this is going to be so much easier when they go to school. Oh, it's going to be so much easier when they're, when they can drive. It's going to be so much easier. And then, as you know, now I'm in this like state of, oh God, now it's over and they're leaving for university. When we're recording this, I've got about a month of them left in the house before they both go to university. So anyway, I've been having this reflection, and it's been happening for me for a while now, this whole like, wait a second, is ambition even something I'm interested in? Like, does it even serve me at all, this idea of ambition, at least in the classical sense of my definition of it? I think I went off track there. I don't know what I was saying as usual, but you're looking at me like a deer in the headlights, and you froze for about 2 minutes of me talking that I was like, I don't even know Sarah's here anymore, but I'm going to continue on my monologue about brass rings and ambition.
No, I was there. I was fully present. I was being, I was
Oh,
I was being a deer in the headlights. Well, I think it's do we need a new definition for ambition, or do we just need to completely reframe it? Like,
yeah, I'd love to just
it
ditch
doesn't
it.
that doesn't the ambition, the way you describe it, the brass rings, feels so sad and exhausting to me right now in my life.
Yes.
You know, it's just, that's exactly what it feels like. And if you came into your 30s thinking, I'm going to feel sad and exhausted at the end of this, like, that's not what's marketed to you. What's marketed to you is that you're going to have like a beautiful house and a perfect partner and 2.5 perfect children, and you're going to be fit and beautiful and Botoxed and whatever. Like, it's just, everything's going to be great.
Well, and I do want to say this too, like the thing I didn't get to say there is that there's the milestones and those brass rings. The last one is having the kids. There aren't any after that. Like, nobody told me there were any brass rings after having kids. And so what happened is I had the kids, I turned 50 last year, and I was like, what the fuck? Are there no more things? Like, what happens for the next 30 years? Is there nothing to look forward to? And that was, I think, really for me, the turning point on the ambition thing. So I was like, hold on, I got to make my own joy here.
Yeah.
Like, this was never about those things. And of course, the next 30 years can be great.
It's going to be full. It's going to be rich and fantastic.
Yeah, but it's not going to be because I got this thing or accomplished X, or, that's not going to be what it's about.
I think I'm just thinking about that, like 46-year-old sad, exhausted person. Like really, we should really change the marketing around ambition. I wonder what that would look like. Want to be sad and exhausted at the end of
drinking too much and up at 3:30 in the morning, giggling, am I an alcoholic? Oh yes, please sign me up for that. That sounds awesome.
That sounds awesome. Yeah. So how about like the ambition of being? Can we reframe it as the ambition of being? It's interesting because I had, I was pretty, I use the words A-type. I don't really know what that means, but pretty driven. I was a good student. I had the same messages that you did, be better, be bigger, be stronger, be all of those, be everything. And then I married somebody who has a lot of good balance in his life. And he's, you've probably through the threads of all the other podcasts been able to see that. And it's not that he hasn't been ambitious in his life, but he is very good at being ambitious around living living in the moment. And it's taken me many years, and I'm still struggling with it, but it's taken me many years to really let go of that feeling of panic around that ambition I was taught, and and to understand that that's not, it didn't serve me. I mean, it served me in some ways. It got me a career that I've liked for the most part, but it didn't. But it's taking a lot of unwinding over the course of my life to like figure that out. And I think one of the main things, it's just coming to me now, one of the things that was really interesting at various points in my career where I felt really burnt out, largely because I was trying to manage too many things in my life. The kids were younger, is that, I've said, I just want to break. I just want to quit. I just want a year off. And he's always said, okay, well, you should do that. And whereas the brain I was brought up with says, no, you don't do that. That is not acceptable. But for him, that balanced life is far more important. He lost his mom earlier. I haven't lost my parents. He lost his mom when I think he was 40. And so I think that plays into it. It's like, seeing that really it can be over very quickly.
Right.
And so that actually tempered my like classical ambition, and has started, like, it's been, again, I was schooled very strongly in the ambition and the control. And so it's been a gradual unwinding of living with someone who's modeling for me another way. And it's been quite a gift. But as you know, as we continue these conversations, and as I continue to look at it in my own life, I think that my ambition for the next 30 years of my life, or whatever it's going to be, is to actually be.
Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to say. That idea of like the energy, all the energy gets directed into the being, and doing that as well as I can. And of course you have to do, I always say this, like, you can't just be, you get nothing done. Like we have to find that. For me, that's whenever I'm talking about balance, that's what I'm talking about. I'm finding that sweet spot for you between doing and being. So making sure that you're doing enough of the being, and being doesn't mean always just sitting still and doing nothing, by the way. You can be and do, like, they're the types of things that Sarah and I talk about that just bring you joy, and that you lose time over. And it might be, you might be very active in a being phase, but it's different from doing for the sake of doing and accomplishing and producing, right? Being is different from that. So you're trying to find that sweet spot there. And as you were chatting, I was thinking, you know, another thing worth mentioning is the fact, this phenomenon that I've experienced and that I see happening for so many of the women in midlife that I work with, which is when you lean into this being and you shift your goals away from the milestones, and you let go of all of these constructs that you were, this shit that you were sold as a girl about what it's like to be, what it means to be a successful woman.
Yeah.
When you let go of that stuff and you start focusing in on, like, no, I just want I want my ordinary day. And this is my main goal every single day. It's like, how, and it's going to sound corny, like, how can I have the most joy today? Like, how can I set myself up for a great day? I want to lay my head down at the end of the day on my pillow and say, that was a good day. That's my goal. Yeah. So when you look, but the really cool thing is that when you start leaning into that and focusing in on that, that's where the abundance comes from. All of a sudden, all of these things start happening, and you're like, oh God, I hit a milestone I didn't even have.
Exactly.
You know? Like that's what's been happening for me. It's like, oh goodness, like my business has turned into this amazing thing I'm so proud of, because I've been focusing in on making my individual singular days joyful. Yeah. And the success that's come to me has come to me as a result, largely, of letting go of this framework, this false framework I had for what success looked like, and what ambition meant, and just letting go of all of that, and allowing myself to just really do the things that bring me joy and let go of the things that don't, has allowed this real, like, these cheesy words I hear all the time that I really don't like flow, and abundance. Like, I'm putting those in air quotes if you're not watching me. But they're actually real words, and they make sense, and I see them happening. I see this, like, I do feel like this, I'm in this kind of flow state. And by flow state, I just mean it's easy. Yeah. And that does not mean life's not hard sometimes. That does not mean shitty stuff is not happening, because it absolutely does and is and will continue to happen. But when it's not, and even when it is, I'm committed to trying to be in the actual moment I'm in and not escape from it and numb myself out from it, because there's so much great stuff available in the moment. And it's also as I just said, it is the way that I actually get more and bring more into my life, is by doing a little less, especially of the stuff I don't enjoy, and spending more time being.
It doesn't mean doing less work. Right. Like, it's
exactly,
if the work is something that's bringing you joy, or even if you can put yourself in a place where you're being, like, fully present in that work, then it's more likely to bring you joy. Mm-hmm. And so it's not about, like, having a different kind of ambition is not about not working hard. Like that's sort of, there's part of me that reacts, that goes like this, but you should be working hard, but you should be working hard. You know, there's like, where's the, if you're only
can be
joy, Wendy, how can you fulfill that part of you that needs to work hard? That's the old script, right? Which is just, and so trying to, like, meld that together was interesting, because you said I'm trying to do less of the things that I don't like to do. I really don't like doing dishes. We've had this conversation with the dishwasher and that. Anyways, I won't get into that, but I was experimenting with presents, and this was a while ago, and I was like, okay, just you're going to be present to everything you do for the next like 10 minutes, like really, really try to be fully present. And so I was washing dishes and I was feeling the warm water on my hands and like, just honestly, I was really trying to be there. And the dishes, which I hate doing, were far less painful because I was actually not also thinking about how I've just got to get these dishes done in order to go to the next thing.
Yeah.
I was actually fully washing dishes.
Yeah. That's important. I think it's important to say that. Like there are lots of things you have to do in life that maybe are not your favorite things, but when you are actually focusing in on, and this is really, I think gratitude, what a fan I am of gratitude. And I know you love gratitude too, Sarah, but like, this is really where a gratitude practice too can come into play. Like I'll actually say to my clients, direct your gratitude at the thing you dislike the most. So take that gratitude practice. And if there's like a coworker who drives you bonkers, try to come up with 3 things that day that you're grateful for about that person and your relationship with them. If dishes drive you bananas and you can't stand them, 3 things you're grateful for about that. And if you can be there in the moment like you were, you're going to have no problem coming up with those 3 things.
Yeah.
Right? Like taking this time to do this task has actually allowed me some space in my brain to think about this thing that I haven't had time to think about all day, or to, give myself like an opportunity to breathe slower and deeper, or, to remind my brain of the fact that it's okay to stand still and the world won't fall apart, or whatever. I love that. And I think it's really important to be clear about that. This isn't necessarily about not working as hard or doing less, although it can be.
It can be. Yeah.
I do want to make sure people know that, like, it can be about working less. And for a lot of women, that's an important piece of this, is actually working less, right? It depends where what your balance is right now, and that doing and being, and like, do I need to do less and be more? Probably is the answer to that question. I mean, most of us do.
Every day I work.
You can be doing, I'm putting this in air quotes, doing something, and it's really actually more being, right? And that's what you're talking about with the dishes. It's a great example of that. Yeah. Wow, we're getting really deep and esoteric here. I feel like that might be a sign that we should wrap this puppy up.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
The article was just another way for us to frame the things that we talk about, another landing spot for us to say, like, okay, so sometimes the balance between being and doing looks like this. Sometimes we call it ambition. Sometimes we call it the end of ambition. Sometimes now I think we should change. I think we should change the definition of ambition, or not, or just
it sounds like a bad thing. The end of ambition objectively sounds like a very serious problem. And I guess we're here to say we actually don't think it's a problem. We think it might be part of the solution in terms of living a resonant, fulfilled, and happy life, especially as a woman in midlife. Yeah. Okay. Well, we have a variety of conversations that we've had. We haven't talked about yet on the podcast. So we'll be back with another one, of course. So one of the things that Sarah and I want to talk about is things that drive us crazy. Remember that topic that we still haven't, do you remember what was on it? Yeah, our pet peeves.
I've forgotten about that.
One of them was very detailed character lists or maps at the beginning of novels. So it's a random list. We're still building it. But we thought we can't be alone in these things that drive us bananas, and we should just do a fun podcast episode where we talk about all the pet peeves we have. If you have pet peeves,
send them in,
because I think it would be hysterical to just talk about midlife women's pet peeves and have like a list of them and go through them, because I feel so certain that 95% of them are universal. And I think it would be so funny to talk through all of that. So we'll be back with that. But I wanted to cover off this topic with Sarah earlier on in season 3. So we are recording it in July. And Sarah, next time we talk, you may have an update too on your coaching courses that you're taking, because you may have another one in the books by the time we record an episode. Yeah. Awesome.
And
Okay.
Wendy's living next door to me pretty much.
Okay, well, we can't announce that yet. Now we've announced it. What if it doesn't happen?
Okay, sorry.
There's a
We're
possibility. There is a possibility. So super quick update. So we've sold our house, our main city house, which is actually in the suburbs, quite far suburbs of the city. Sarah lives downtown. Sarah used to commute out to my house a lot for whatever reasons we don't need to talk about. I'm very rarely invited to Sarah's house, but we were stressing a little bit about the fact that I was going to be living in at my Cove house, which is really has been our cottage for the last few years permanently, which is quite a drive from Sarah's place. And I, through the process of this whole empty nesting thing this summer, I've come into some realizations around what I want and don't want, kind of in alignment with what we're talking about today, just like paying attention, listening, like, what is it I need more of, less of, what do I actually want? And what I realized is I don't want to be isolated yet. I'm definitely nowhere near retirement. I'm 51. I don't want to socially isolate myself in the way that could happen if I moved out here permanently right now. And I actually really wanted something to be excited about in terms of the next chapter. And I realized one thing that my husband and I haven't done since we were really before we were married, honestly, is live in an urban location. And we did for the first 4 or 5 years of our relationship, and it was super fun. And, then we had kids and moved out to the suburbs like people do often. And that was our life. But we don't need to be in the suburbs anymore. And neither one of us is ready to stop all of that. So we are hopefully securing a rental that's actually just a few blocks from Sarah's house, which is awesome. So fingers crossed for me that works out, but that would be really, that would be very, very cool. And then Sarah and I can continue to have our regular trash TV nights where we come up with ideas for this podcast. So it'll benefit you too. So, send the good vibes out to the universe for this rental for us. Yeah. Anyway, Sarah, thanks so much for your time today. And I will see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Bite Size Balance with your host, Wendy McCallum. As a burnout and balance coach, I help busy high achievers like you create a more balanced, joyful life. Ready to create a life you don't want to escape from? Download your free Blueprint for Change now. This incredible workbook includes some of my favorite coaching tools and will help you get clear on what you need more and less of in your life. Grab it at www.wendymccallum.com/blueprint. That's www.wendymccallum.com/blueprint.